Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're going to be talking about Kingdom Come Deliverance II. And today's video is going to be sort of pseudo-historical. I'm not going to go in depth on any of the history behind any of this stuff. If you're interested in that, go check out my history channel, Parry This. I've covered a bunch of stuff from the first game, and I plan on covering a lot from this second game. So if you want to see the in-depth historical stuff, go check it out over there. For now, we're just going to be talking about potential gameplay. And so big shout out to Big Vad, or Vadulier, I believe is how you would pronounce that. Maybe it's French and I don't speak French. Over on Discord, he is the one who provided me with all of this information and has been kind enough to also provide me with the in-game screenshots from all of the promotional footage that supports all of this stuff. So without all of that information, this video just wouldn't be possible, or it would have taken a tremendous amount of work on my part, which, you know, it would also be a lot less fun. So we're just going to dive on in, and we're going to be going through the two different factions in the game. And now, a lot of this is speculative. Some of this is fairly well confirmed. A lot of it is speculative, and there may be a lot more complexities than we know about. This is, of course, all of this information is before I've ever played the game, so take everything with a grain of salt. But we do have some screenshots and history to support a lot of what's going on here. So we're just going to go through the two different factions, starting with the League of Lords, and then we'll talk about the Bohemian Duchy, or the Loyalist faction, afterwards. We have more information about the League of Lords, so that's why we're starting here. So our first thing to talk about, or whatever, that we're taking more in the abstract, because it doesn't exist in the game physically, but obviously as a presence it does, is the City of Prague. And so the City of Prague was taken by Sigismund in 1402, I should say by Sigismund and the League of Lords, and it became sort of his seat in Bohemia as the capital. It made perfect sense for it to be there, and most of that comes through the fact that we had Markvart Von Aulitz, who was the military commander of the Royal Prague Army, and he decided to side with Sigismund for political gain, and in doing so basically handed the city over to him. And now he has that army and he's using it at his disposal, and historically in 1402 he used that army to come and put down the rebellion in Kuttenberg, rebellion against Sigismund, that is. And so we have the City of Prague as our first sort of faction in the League of Lords, and that is being led by Markvart Von Aulitz. And for reference, anytime we see this sigil, I'm showing you on screen both some screenshots and everything, this sigil where we have the red shield with the white castle with three towers, that is it is one of the coat of arms of Prague at the time. Prague at the time, I believe, had 4 distinct coat of arms for the different boroughs. They were all similar, but, you know, varied in various different ways. This one would be for, I believe, the Old Town, and it was probably the most well-known sigil at the time. But anyway, anytime we see this is the forces of Prague, this is the forces that are commanded by Markvart von Aulitz, and this is the force that is most often going to be antagonistic towards the Loyalists, or the Wenceslas faction in the game. So that's our first sub-faction in the League of Lords. Our second one is going to be Otto von Bergow, or Otto III. He is the one at Trotsky Castle. He's kind of the whole driving force of what we're going towards, so obviously we know that he's in the game. We've seen him in the footage, and just we know this. It's how this first game ends that we're going to see him. So obviously he's in the game. There's two different aspects of this to talk about. We have Otto himself, who is the provincial lord and owner of the Trotsky Castle, that whole domain. So from what we are probably going to be experiencing in the Bohemian Paradise region, he's kind of the big cheese there. And so he's a member of the League of Lords, hates Wenceslas IV. We were sent there to try and get him on our side because he's powerful, and that comes in with our next section, which is the Bergow royal power. But it's unlikely that he's going to be supportive in any way because of how much he dislikes Wenceslas IV and how integral he is to the League of Lords. So the other side of the Bergow discussion is the Bergow royal power. So the reason why he's so important is because he's the royal chamberlain and tax collector for all of the royal cities of Bohemia. So he has he's got lots of forces, B, he's a wealthy person, and C, he's extremely influential, especially in and around Kuttenberg. So that's why we were sent to, negotiate with him, or to deliver the letter from Jobst of Moravia. But also, that's also why he's probably not going to be helpful, and he might be the one that imprisons us for all we know. His sigil is, the Bergow sigil itself is a red shield with a white winged fish. and we see that all over the place. We see it on Otto III himself. We also see it on his soldiers, on the shields. This one is going to be something we're probably going to see a lot, probably in both regions of the game, but definitely in the Bohemian Paradise. So not much more to say about him. We definitely know he's involved, and we definitely know he's a member of the League of Lords. I mean, we had confirmation straight from one of his soldiers in one of the trailers that they released that he is a member of the League of Lords, and historically he was, so that's not likely to change. So that's our second part of the League of Lords faction. Our third is going to be Kuttenberg City. So Kuttenberg City, historically speaking, is where the rebellion against Sigismund starts, but it's put down by, like I said, the Prague army led by Markvart Von Aulitz, and then Kuttenberg becomes essentially yet another puppet in the control of Sigismund of Hungary, and that is through one of his loyal members of the League of Lords, Oldrich of Hradec. Like I said, it's the birthplace of the rebellion. You can see on screen we've got another graphic here that kind of helps out with that, and you can see our proof of involvement here. So you can see on the top left we've got that guy there who appears to have just got hit in a tournament or something. You can see on his chest that's the sigil of Oldrich of Hradec, so that's how we get him being in the game. That's our confirmation there. And then down below you can just see the various Kuttenberg soldiers. They have crests on their coifs that appear to be the Kuttenberg sigil. So, and they're also in Kuttenberg, so it would make sense that that's where it is. So this is another faction, or you could call it two. You could call the House of Hradec and Kuttenberg under the League of Lords umbrella. But so there we have more confirmed involvement in the game through stuff that we've already seen on screen. And so just moving down while we're still connected there to Henry and Oldrich of Hradec. So like we said, they're already parts of the Hradec family, and we have confirmation through the sigils that we've seen that they're likely to be involved, and because of the fact that, historically speaking, one of them did get put in charge of Kuttenberg after the army of Prague put down the rebellion, that all makes perfect sense. But moving on to Henry III of Rosenberg, he's someone we had mentioned in the first game, so pretty cool to see that coming through. Obviously very, very powerful and important person at the time. He was the Royal Military Burgrave of Prague, which is a position that would also be held by Divish of Taumburg historically, so interesting there, but makes him very, very important to A, the whole region, and B, Sigismund, because, Prague is his seat of power in Bohemia. The Rosenbergs are a very powerful and rich family. Like I said, we got references to that in the first game, but so he is also a part of the League of Lords. We got him in that trailer, the most recent trailer, I believe it was, standing next to Markvart Von Aulitz and Erika Bumfancy. So he's one of the most powerful members of the League of Lords, a strong ally of Sigismund, and historically was throughout the entire period of the Bohemian Civil War. And at the time of this game was the Royal Burgrave of Prague, and was just immensely powerful and had a lot of troops and wealth at his disposal. Very important member of the League of Lords, and definitely present in the game. Next, moving on to the Ruthard family. We don't have any evidence, at least that I could tell yet, or have seen through any of the screenshots, of people wearing this crest, but we do have evidence of them existing in the game through the fact that the Ruthard family owned Malashov Castle, or Malashov Fort. I'm not sure if it was considered a fort or castle, but they own that, and we know that that is in the game. We've seen images of it, so we know that it exists in the game. The Ruthard family are another member of the League of Lords that we know will be in the game. Our next one falls under the probably in the game, and we have some evidence for it, but it's not super duper confirmed, and that would be Havel Medek of Valdek. So if you remember from the first game, we heard about him in that he had beef with Divish of Taumburg. In fact, he at one point imprisoned Divish of Taumburg, and that caused a lot of problems in that whole fiefdom there for a while. We've heard of him before. He was previously mentioned quite a bit by Divish in the first game, so it would be pretty cool if he exists in here, and historically, Havel Medek of Valdek was a member of the League of Lords. As for Havel Medek himself, or just the House of Valdek, we have a little bit of evidence for his existence in the game, and it's that, his sigil is it's a black field with a white boar on it, and we appear to have images in the game. Now they're relatively low resolution, but it looks like that's the sigil that these troops are carrying, and that is on top of these on the top of this castle. Apparently their family participated in the construction of Trotsky Castle, so hard to say where they would be. We don't have irrefutable proof that they're going to be in KCD2, but it would make sense that they are, given that they're from the area. They were mentioned in the first game quite a bit, and we appear to have a matching flags in the game for their sigil. So maybe Havel Medek will be in this game, and if so, he'll be a member of the League of Lords like he was in real life. And lastly, for stuff that's relatively well confirmed in this game, or in this case, very well confirmed, we have the Kingdom of Hungary. So Sigismund is the King of Hungary. He comes comes from the House of Luxembourg, but he is at this time and for a while now has been proclaimed the King of Hungary. He's in solid control of it. So that is his faction. And we do know that he's in the game. We've seen, as you can see on screen, there's a picture in this, what appears to be a tournament. In the background, there just sitting there is a flag that clearly has the sigil of the Kingdom of Hungary on it. We've also seen Sigismund of Luxembourg himself in one of the trailers in full detail, and you can see that on screen. So obviously, as the leader of the faction, or the person that the faction is supporting, the Kingdom of Hungary is a part of the League of Lords side. So we know that to some extent, the Kingdom of Hungary plays a part in this game. But that does it for the stuff that's pretty well confirmed. We have a couple other suspected things that we don't have screenshots of in the game, but would or could exist at this time in this area and are well-documented members or parts of the League of Lords. First part of that is just the Duchy of Austria. So the Duchy of Austria is a great ally of Sigismund. Albrecht IV of Austria provided military power to Sigismund to fight the rebellion in Bohemia. He even kept Wenceslas IV in Vienna, so he was a part of the whole kidnapping and holding Wenceslas hostage plot. So it would make sense, given the fact that he lent Sigismund military support for this rebellion and was part of the kidnapping and holding him hostage plot, it would make sense if Albrecht IV of Austria or just some forces from the Duchy of Austria were present in this game, and if they were, they'd be on the side of the League of Lords. Next, we have Nicholas of Gemnestay, I believe is how you say that, another lord loyal to Sigismund. So we have reference to this historically that he responded to a letter of appeal to besiege Kuttenberg in December 1402. As a reward, Sigismund gave him ownership of Fort Perkenstein, which is very close to Kuttenberg, and which previously, before it was given to him, had belonged to the rebel lord Peter of Pisek. So we don't know that this person will be in the game. We don't know that this faction will be in the game. We don't have any screenshots or anything to support that. But given the fact that, again, historically this was a member of the League of Lords, someone who was loyal, someone who provided military aid during the conflict that we're going to be playing in, and was then granted a nearby castle, it would make sense if Nicholas of Gemnestay or this faction, in some way was in the game. And if so, again, they'd be a member of the League of Lords. Lastly, as far as the League of Lords goes, we have a person and a city that, again, we don't know for sure if they will be in the game, but it would make sense given that geographically they're in the area and historically they took part in it. So first of all, Smil Flashka of Pardubice, I believe is how you say that, is another person who reportedly hated Wenceslaus and joined Sigismund during his invasion in 1402. He was definitely a member of the League of Lords and was then made the royal governor or royal military governor of Czaslau, I think is how you say that, where he suppressed the local rebellion there. And so we don't know for sure whether or not he will be in the game or if Czaslau City will be a part of the game, but historically speaking, this was one of the largest battles of the period, and so it's likely that if we're trying to get these large battles and big action set pieces in the game, it's likely that we're going to see the Battle of Lachy or whatever it was called. We're likely to see that in here, and if so, then, this could be our last element that we possibly are going to see as part of the League of Lords. So I hope that was a fairly good representation of all of the information that we have about the League of Lords currently, just through the footage and stuff that we've actually seen of the game, and of course looking at it through the lens of the historical backdrop that the game is based off of. So that's the League of Lords. Now we'll talk about the Loyalists, who we do know less about, but we still know something about. All right, moving on to our second faction, which would be the Loyalists, or the Duchy of Bohemia as a whole, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, the people who are under the umbrella of Jobst of Luxembourg, who are supporting Wenceslas IV against Sigismund of Hungary. So this is the faction that ostensibly we belong to in the game. And so this falls into a couple different categories. We have several people that are here on this board in front of us here that could be in the game, that we definitely have not seen any footage of yet, but make sense to be here. A, because historically speaking, again, they were supporters of Wenceslaus in this conflict, and B, they existed in the first game. So I'll start off with the people that we don't have any footage of them existing in this game yet, but they were in the first game, and so, it's somewhat reasonable given that we're not very far from the Ratay-Sasau region, that for all we know, they could show up, or at least be mentioned, or they could send forces for all we know. So under that category falls all of the lords from the first game. Sir Radzig Kobyla, who is the hetman of Wenceslas, so that's like the regional military commander, which is a very high-ranking position at the time, so it would make total sense that Radzig Kobyla would either be here personally in this game or would send forces or do something. So him being involved, he's not on the board in front of us here, but obviously that would make perfect sense. Another one that falls under that category is Henry of Leipa. So the Lords of Leipa definitely have a presence in this game through Hans Capon. He was also of the Leipa family, well, a cousin or whatever, but you know, he's the rightful Lord of Rradec, etc. I go into a big history on that over in my videos about both of them on my history channel. So if you want to hear more about that rather complex situation, check those out. But we don't have any footage of anyone other than the people that came with Hans in the game coming from Rradec, you know, Henry of Leipa. But we do know that Father Godwin is going to be in the game, and we know that he comes from the Rradec fiefdom, so it's entirely possible that he was sent specifically by Henry of Leipa. We don't know. But they're part of the Ronov family. They're very powerful. The Ronov family is a very powerful family, one of the larger political movers in the whole kingdom of Bohemia, and obviously an important part of this alliance, and that would be why at the end of the first game, Jobst of Luxembourg came to Rradec. So it's entirely possible that they will play a part in this game somehow, but we have not seen footage of them doing it. Another one is Jan II of Liechtenstein. We don't have any footage of him or any of his soldiers. I don't think we've seen his sigil. I don't think any of that has come up in any of the pre-release footage, but again, he was another member of this alliance. He was a relative. I can't remember exactly how he was related, but he is related somehow to Jobst of Luxembourg or the Luxembourg dynasty. I can't remember. But he was one of the people in the final scene in the first game, and he was an important member of the alliance, so it's possible that we're going to see him, even though we don't have any footage of him in the game at this time. Everyone else on this screen is someone that we're pretty dang sure we've seen them on screen, or we have, you know, actual clear screenshots of their sigil, you know, showing up in the game. So we're just going to go through them one at a time. We'll start with one that a lot of people are very excited about, which is Hynek of Kunstat, the Dry Devil. So here on the screen you can see it says a Moravian rebel lord and military commander, allied with Prokop of Luxembourg. He fought in Austria and Bohemia, and he is the fear of his enemies. We can say he pissed off Sigismund a lot. So he's definitely a thorn in people's side. Not really a powerful high lord with a lot of money, but definitely someone who does a lot of fighting and killing. And he's the first person that we're kind of looking at under the umbrella of rebels in this game. So he is the one that we're pretty sure we've seen in multiple scenes being antagonistic in some way towards someone. We don't know who. It was highlighted as one of the main people in the most recent story trailer. So he shows up a lot. So we are fairly certain that that's who that is, and that he's going to play a big role. And his sigil, or whatever you want to call it, is a white field with 3 black stripes. So that's what we've got working for us. You can see that to the right on this screen here. Other than that, we have 2 other factions falling under the rebel category. We have Jan Zizka of Lamberg, who we don't necessarily have any proof, at least not that I've seen, that they exist, but it's a possibility. And then the Loyalists, which is just an umbrella. They are using the sigil of the Duchy of Bohemia, so just to show their loyalty to Wenceslas IV. Anytime we see I believe it's a black eagle with red talons on a white field, that is the Duchy of Bohemia. Those are going to be Loyalists, and they are going to fall under this faction, the pro-Wenceslas faction. Next up, we can move on to another one that is fairly well confirmed. We have Jobst of Luxembourg, or Jobst of Moravia. I believe he was the Margrave of Moravia at this time. He is the one leading this faction. We've seen him in the trailer. We know that he exists in the world because he's the one who sent us to Trotsky Castle. He's very powerful. At one point, historically speaking, I believe he becomes King of Bohemia, or King of the Romans. I can't remember which one he holds, but he holds some important high-ranking seat. Basically, the seat for Holy Roman Emperor at this time, historically, was up in the air between Wenceslas IV, Sigismund of Hungary, who eventually becomes Holy Roman Emperor, I believe, and Jobst of Moravia. So they're all deeply interconnected. Sigismund and Wenceslas are half-brothers. Jobst is their cousin, or the cousin of Sigismund. I'm not sure if it was on one side of the family and not the other, but I believe he's the cousin to both, so I'm assuming he's going to be the nephew of Charles IV, but whatever the case is. He's the leader of this alliance. We've seen him in the trailers. We know he exists. His sigil is this checkered red and white eagle on a blue field. Again, quite important, and we know he exists. It's him. This is him on the top left of the screen. Another interesting one we have is the Pisek family. So this one we've seen a couple times in the different trailers. At one point, we see a guy trying to run across a drawbridge and getting shot in the back, and he's clearly got the sigil on him. But they're a large and influential family in Kuttenberg, so they're very important in the area. They have multiple properties around there, which are Sukdol and Rabstein, which is now, in the modern modern day is underwater, so we've seen that on the map of the area. And Perstenik, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. So they were loyal to Wenceslas IV the whole time through and fought Sigismund all the way out through from December of 1402, which is when he started invaded, all the way through 1403, which is where the game takes place. So a very loyal and wealthy family from the area that is loyal to Wenceslas. As far as they go, we know at least one of their properties is going to play a part in the game. The Sukdol Castle, that's the place where we see, or at least I believe that the siege at Sukdol is what we see through the eyes of Father Godwin, who is a playable character in this game, at least for that part. We've seen that in a trailer, so we know that they're in the game, we know that they have a significant amount of power in the game, and we know that they have something to do with the main story. Next we have Lacek of Helfstejn, a powerful lord ally with Jobst and is loyal to Wenceslas IV. He fights against the League of Lords and involves in a rebel and bandit groups, and involving the rebel and bandit groups. So they're likely who we're going to be working with, I would say, as like the liaison for our rebel group that we've been told by Sir Toby we're going to be forming. We once again have a screenshot proving that this is, Lacek of Kravar is going to exist in the game. We have this person here on screen. Looks like a rather wealthy person with very nice armor. We can clearly see the sigil on his crossbow bolt holster thing, quiver, I should say. So we have confirmation that at least this house, but possibly this lord, is going to be involved in the game. Speculation here you can see on screen, possibly a protector of Hans Capon and Henry. My guess would be maybe might have something to do with the end of the first act or whatever. If we do get imprisoned by Otto von Bergow at Trotsky, possibly this guy or this house has something to do with getting us out of that. Who can say, but we do have evidence that they exist in this game. And finally, for this faction, we have the Semin family, or I'm just going to assume it's Semin, which is another influential family from isolated regions of northeast Bohemia, including owners of Fort Semin under Lord John of Semin. That's next to Trotsky Castle, so that's close by. Is fairly neutral in the Civil War, but in tension with Otto III of Bergow. So this is one that is more marginal than others. So we have members of the League of Lords that hate Wenceslas, and we have members of the Loyalists who are very loyal to Wenceslas, and some of them is because they hate Sigismund. So we have a lot of strong stuff there. For the Semin family, we don't really have much of a motive one way or the other, but they are in conflict and competition with Otto von Bergow, and because of that, they're more likely to align with the Loyalist faction, just, out of common interest or common enemy. And as for the family, their crest in real life was a green and white striped shield, so one white line in the middle and a green one on either side. In the game, we see that represented by 3 oak leaves and 2 acorns on green, which is another historically associated crest with their family. And they own Semin Fortress, which appears to be in the game. So we have pretty solid evidence that they also exist in the game on the side of the Loyalists. So that is actually it. As far as people I haven't talked about, we have Jan Zizka, who we have seen in the game and have seen a decent amount. In fact, under the slide for the rebels, we have the scene where we're pretty sure it's Jan Zizka and some of his men. It's possible that they're fighting under the Loyalist banner, or maybe they're fighting with Hynek of Kunstat. We don't know, really. I really don't actually have any evidence. They could be entirely separate and just be their own thing, but I think it's likely that they're fighting on the side of the Loyalists, possibly at least. But anyway, we have Jan Zizka in the game, who I haven't talked about or confirmed yet. I'm not sure which side he would be on, but probably not the League of Lords, given the fact that in the Hussite conflict, the League of Lords was opposed to the Hussites, as was Sigismund of Hungary. So it's likely that Jan Zizka is going to be on Wenceslas' side marginally, or maybe through default. Other than that, we have Istvan Toth. I cannot be certain where he would land. In the previous game, he was aligned with Sigismund and was aligned with Markvart Von Aulitz, but interestingly, in this game, we have seen Markvart Von Aulitz standing next to Eric, and we've seen him standing next to Otto von Bergow, but we haven't seen him standing next to Istvan Toth yet. So it's entirely possible that Istvan Toth is no longer aligned with them, or maybe he dies early in the game, or whatever, but ostensibly, if he plays a large part in the entire story of the game, he's obviously going to be aligned with the League of Lords, not the Allies. We do have a scene in one of the trailers where Jobst of Luxembourg was yelling at Henry, saying he's arranged a fragile truce and it can't be screwed up by any revenge plots or something along those lines. He could be talking about a bunch of different people in that. The two obvious people that he's probably talking about are either Markvart Von Aulitz or Istvan Toth, but whatever the case may be, it's likely that Istvan Toth is also a member of the League of Lords. But that is pretty much it for lords and factions and stuff that we have fairly well confirmed or a really, really good bet that they're going to exist in the game and which side they're going to be on. So I hope this video was useful and informative and not just confusing, but I think it's all very interesting. So if you're a fan of the history behind this game, I hope this was a good starting place. And like I said, I plan to go in depth for each of these topics from a historical point of view on my history channel, Parry This. So subscribe to that channel if you want to see that sort of stuff, because I'll be releasing those videos soon. But with all that being said, that's all for today. Thanks a ton for watching and have a nice day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.